Heavens, would you just look at the calendar? We're already knee-deep in spooky season, the skellies are getting restless, and for some of you out there, you might be possessed of a particular compulsion to seek out something appropriately spooky to play during these ever-darkening, ever-ominous evenings. Well, fear no more! Wait, no, that's not right. Fear a lot more! Yes! For today, I bring you a veritable smorgasbord of damned delights, macabre missions, and creepy campouts, a sampling platter of sorts, running the gamut of popcorn jumpscare creepfests to more refined, atmospheric horrors. So with introductions out the way, let me be your guide as I welcome you to yet another episode of Doom Mod Madness. I imagine there's nothing quite like the primal fear of finding yourself alone in a forest in the dead of night. Even more so when that campfire that's been diligently providing you with light up until now suddenly burns out. Such is the unenviable position you'll find yourself in if you decide to give Ghouls Forest 3 a spin. As for the ghouls themselves, a variety stalk these haunted woods, as for which you'll encounter first, that all depends on the luck of the draw. Something that no doubt increases the tension during the course of this mod is the fact that one hit is all it takes for a ghoul to end your run, and this can quite frequently lead to some downright panic-inducing encounters, particularly in regards to the Jitter Skull. Good grief, do I hate the Jitter Skull, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that a fair degree of you out there aren't so much a fan either. But should you find yourself eventually conquering the triple threat of the Screaming Face, the Creeper, and the Jitter Skull, you will then have to contend with the ghostly form of Yuri, who is really annoyed that you never returned that videotape. But all in all, if you're after a short, sharp shock, Ghouls Forest 3 is more than happy to oblige. On a similar front, Ghosted 2 will also pit you against a roster of ghoulish apparitions, but rather than being armed with a bow and arrow, you're in fact only given a flashlight. One that unfortunately doesn't work in the current version, especially if you're using the most up-to-date version of GZ Doom, but if anything, I felt it helped add to the tension. Certainly, one of my favourite aspects of this mod are the effects that the ghosts have on the environment. Lights flickering, some cases blowing out completely, and as they draw ever closer, the screen begins to fill with static. With the central mechanic of having to collect multiple arcane pages scattered amongst the many corners of any given level here in Ghosted 2, it's easy to see where the source inspiration stems from. That, of course, of Slender. And yes, the man himself does indeed see fit to make a number of appearances. In my case, entirely too many. Couldn't get rid of the bugger. Every new map I played, there he was. But don't let that dissuade you, there are a variety of ghosts to contend with here, and mercifully, each ghost here comes replete with their own particular tells, allowing you to divine not just how close they are in the form of the flickering lights, a universal attribute across all of them here, but also sound effects that allow you to figure out just exactly what you're up against. And that's good information to have, because not all ghosts here are created equal. Some are more aggressive than others, some are more methodical in their pacing, some destroy lights as they make their passage through, footsteps lingering behind, while others maliciously flip them off, buttering you up for that final spook. Regardless, I'd say that the other star of the show here is certainly the labyrinthine level design. There are multiple maps here to wind your way through, each of them themed after recognizably spooky locales, and the fact that the pages never quite appear in the same place twice will mean that there is ample opportunity here to try your hand multiple times over. Who knows, maybe this time you'll finally grab that elusive final page, the stakes raising with every acquisition. On the other hand, maybe you won't. For those of you hoping for something, let's say, a bit more sci-fi over supernatural, Aliens Eradication has got you covered. This, in my humble opinion, is one of the finest Aliens mods to grace the GZ Doom engine, and provide you with not just one class with which to combat the Xenomorph onslaught, but 4. The first, of course, is the Colonist. Equipped with only a humble handgun and a satchel charge, the Colonist is probably the most vulnerable of all of the classes in Alien Eradication, but also boasts the ability to draw assistance from fellow surviving colonists. Additionally, with the native knowledge of the place that they live, they can also take advantage of various systems scattered across the maps, allowing you to trigger traps and help thin out the encroaching horde. The Mercenary is probably the closest analogue that this mod has to the Space Marine, a more solitary character, at least when it comes to the earlier handful of maps, and should you indeed come across a colonist, chances are you should probably dispatch them ASAP. Pulse rifle and a handful of turrets come equipped as standard, and trust me when I say you will be glad to have them. If you fancy being a little bit more morally grey, the Weyland-Yutani Operative is probably going to be the class for you. Not to mention that it's quite literally the kill it with fire class. But intriguingly, it's not just Xenos that you'll be tasked with cleansing in flame, because anyone else unfortunate enough to be on the premises when you arrive are third game too. This includes mercs and colonists. Certainly an interesting mix to contend with, even more so when everything is kicking off at the same time. Additional to the flamethrower, the Weyland-Yutani Operative also has use of drones, which will helpfully circle the area and ensure that no witnesses escape the purge. For all the smart gun fanatics out there, and I know there's a fair few of you, say hello to the Combat Synth. This is the class you pick when you're tired of being persecuted by the Xenos and are utterly sick to death of being one-shotted by a facehugger. Because guess what? The synth don't give a shit about no facehuggers. For all the bombast of this class though, it is best not to get too carried away. Ammo is in finite supply, and despite being essentially a walking tank, the Combat Synth can eventually get overwhelmed. Now, for those of you wondering whether selection of class here effectively constitutes a difficulty select, you should know that each class here actually has their own unique objectives to achieve during the particular playthrough. Sure, the sequence of levels that you'll run through may be the same, but the point at which you enter them and the tasks that you'll need to fulfill during the course of them will actually indeed differ, and it's just fantastically implemented. I seriously cannot do it justice in this small section of video. But essentially what you have here is 4 different campaigns to play through, each offering different styles of play. And for those of you wondering whether Aliens Eradication manages to maintain a third degree of spooky outside of that adrenaline-soaked combat, you should know that these levels are absolutely dripping in atmosphere, utilizing not just sound effects but also soundtrack from the likes of Alien Trilogy and even the movies themselves. This is a mod that will certainly keep you on edge, even in those quieter moments. But honestly, if you're a fan of the Xenomorph, you should not be sleeping on Alien Eradication. Total chaos. No, believe it or not, I have not made a mistake. This is still a mod. Granted, it is now a total conversion mod that doesn't require you to own a copy of Doom 2 in order to run it. It is entirely standalone, but to ignore its origins would be to deny yourself some small sense of wonder, because look at it! Look it! In terms of content, if you're after spooky, oh boy does Total Chaos deliver. Occupying some nightmare realm between Silent Hill and Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, this is a mod that has just a veritable buffet of horrors for you to feast on. I mean, look at this. Look at this shit. I see you. I see you playing peekaboo. For the most part, combat here is weighty, methodical, revolves, especially when it comes to melee, around conservation of stamina. But when it comes to the weaponry you wield, you shouldn't rely on any one item for too long, because even these are susceptible to breakage. But that's where you'll find the inventory management portion of Total Chaos coming into play. You can cobble together various disparate components, make yourself some additional healing items, repair previously defunct weaponry, or even utilize a cooker to make the food a little less radiation-inducing. Don't assume, however, that the combat is melee all the way down. Total Chaos does eventually see fit to equip you with guns, but for the most part, I view them as last resort weapons. Best used when it's one versus many, or when you just plain don't want to have to deal with whatever's currently in front of you. To say much more on the specifics of Total Chaos, I fear may dilute the experience somewhat, but if you do choose to voluntarily delve into this terror for yourself, you should know that this is no short-haul mod. This is a mod that, at least in my most recent run, took me about 9 hours to complete. But truly, Total Chaos is a genuinely impressive mod, and that impressiveness certainly extends well beyond the visuals alone. It has an impeccable sense of atmosphere, one that only increases in density as you progress deeper and deeper into the bowels of Fort Oasis. But as for how deep you'll manage to get before your frayed nerves fail you, that's a question only you'll be able to answer. For those of you seeking a more bite-sized, less system-intensive dose of heavy atmospherics, I'd say look no further than Soundless Mound. As the name of the mod implies, this clearly takes its cues from Silent Hill, tasking you with finding your way out from this seemingly abandoned apartment complex, though it doesn't really stay all that abandoned for long, soon having you face off against strange, twisted variations on those familiar Doom enemy types. Aside from the impeccably uneasy atmospherics, something that Soundless Mound certainly shares with Total Chaos is the sense of heft lent to its combat. Holding down the attack button can produce a heavier swing with a melee item, and just that weight of connection is supremely tangible. You feel it in the hit, you feel it in the way that the enemy crumbles to the ground, and this is something that is no doubt accentuated by bigger, tougher enemies. Literally, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. As for how far exploration can take you in an isolated apartment complex, you'd be surprised where Soundless Mound can take you as the walls of reality begin to peel away. For best results, I'd certainly advise playing Soundless Mound on a higher difficulty, one where resources are a little bit more scarce and the tension as a result is ever so slightly more heightened, and don't be afraid to poke your nose in as many places as possible. There are a few secrets to unearth here, and who knows, you may find yourself stumbling across a familiar face.
What the You want penis enlargement pills?
Hey kid, you like clowns? No? Well fuck you, here's Happy Time Circus 2. Meeting at the intersection of Stephen King's It and The Evil Dead, Happy Time Circus in general is an effectively creepy mod. And this is coming from someone that isn't all that particularly afflicted by a clown phobia. As for what exactly is going on, you find yourself in the midst of an abandoned town currently afflicted with a demonic clown infestation. This typically results in manifestations such as floating red balloons that will occasionally try to eat your face, occurrences of rampant dimensional leakage leading to the multicolor polka dot dimension, overtly aggressive light bulbs, sentient popcorn, oh, and let's not forget weapons powered by clown souls. This one launches guts. To say that Happy Time Circus 2 isn't afraid to get a little creative with its concept would be somewhat of an understatement, especially when you're trying to evade the severed head of Doomguy's pet rabbit Daisy, one that refuses to die and therefore needs to be lured all the way across town, through a spooky forest, past the cabin from Evil Dead, where it can then be put to rest by way of Eldritch Clown Portal. Guess what? That isn't even the end of the mod. There's plenty more to go after that, and that's really the crux of Happy Time Circus 2. It's got an eminently explorable map, many nooks and crannies to poke your nose into, many unfortunate circumstances to try and fight your way out of, and all the while it manages to be never less than unnerving. You've got the sounds that various enemies make, the chuckle of those disembodied heads, and you've got these freaks. All in all, it's a wonderfully creative little slice of hell, and if you're thinking of giving it a whirl for yourself, I'd just say be prepared for somewhat of a challenge. It may start off relatively low-key, but boy, does this ramp up. If, after all that, you're still hungering for ever more spooky mods to fill the void, I've still got a few notable examples for you to give a whirl. Solace Dreams certainly comes to mind. Play as a schoolgirl trapped in limbo, boy don't you just hate when that happens, and search for your missing classmates as you seek a way to escape. Features a lot of Silent Hill inspiration, as well as a splash of Dark Souls in there. The combat itself is a little clunky, and the difficulty is right off the charts, but I certainly can't fault it for some striking visuals and imaginative design. With that in mind, there is currently a remake of Solace Dreams in the works. It's currently in playable alpha, and if you feel like giving both a whirl, maybe providing some feedback that'll help shape the final mod, then you'll find the link on the very same ModDB page. Unloved is another mod that certainly fits the bill. Again, trades on that Silent Hill influence, as all the best mods seem to do, and features a really interesting, just twisted hub environment that constantly surprises in terms of how you move from one location to the next. It's much more traditionally Doomish in terms of its core gameplay, dare I say even overwhelmingly slaughterish at times. But if you find it interesting, you should also know that there's an unfinished sequel floating around out there as well, and it's well worth your time. It's surprisingly substantial. Just don't disappoint yourself and get the version of Unloved that made it to Steam. It's certainly not my favorite version, I'll just leave it at that. And last, but certainly not least, Lilith. Oh, if you hate your eyeballs, you are going to love Lilith. This glitched out, corrupted nightmare of a mod is best enjoyed on Z-Doom instead of the traditional GZ-Doom, and that's because it takes advantage of a few specific Z-Doom features in order to bring you its particular brand of eye fuckery. It's disorientating, nausea-inducing, unsettling. It even features some interesting audio effects to really screw with you, and the longer you play, the more you feel like it's somehow brainwashing you, worming its way deeper into your mind. So yeah, if any of that sounds particularly unpleasant to you, I'd say maybe don't play Lilith, but for the curious out there, you have been warned. And thus brings an end to this compilation of spooky Doom mods to play in the dark. Doubtlessly, there are many more mods that I didn't have time to fit in this particular video, and in that regard, I'd be very intrigued to hear what your favorite spooky mods are in the comments below. If any of the mods featured today have piqued your interest, feel free to check out the description where download links should all hopefully be available. And in the meantime, I wish you a supremely spooky Halloween. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.